cleared the stall that was blocking a lane northbound I-5 out of the Federal Way area up around 288. We added a new crash in the right-hand lane right around 320th. So we have two little backups to deal with there, and we're looking still at a 40-minute drive from Federal Way into Seattle. The Tacoma Drive is still dealing with the heavy slowing around the corner up past the Dome, up to the Puyallup River Bridge. I'm hoping that will dissipate here quickly. The Valley Freeway is also seeing a little bit more slowing again northbound up out of the Sumner area, primarily up around Pacific. Still about a 40-minute drive from Puyallup up into Renton. Then Renton to Bellevue's hovering right around a half an hour as we're dealing with a normal drive there for a Monday. Out of the north end, about 35 minutes now from Everett to Bellevue. We have a little bit more slowing getting down into Canyon Park. There's also a little bit approaching 520. I-5 only has a little bit of slowing around 175th down to about 145th in Shoreline. 30 minutes Everett to Seattle. This report brought to you by Staples. School goes on. Staples has everything to start the year right, no matter where school happens, and all at amazing prices. School on, save on at Staples.
This hour of Seattle's Morning News brought to you by Wilcox Family Farms. Let's summarize this morning's developments. The first presidential debate of 2020 is tomorrow night, and something that I'm sure Joe Biden will bring up, the president's taxes. CBS's Paula Reed tells us about the financial revelations published yesterday.
The New York Times obtained tax return data extending over more than 2 decades and found Mr. Trump paid lower taxes using questionable tactics, including a $72.9 million refund that is currently being audited by the IRS. While claiming losses for many of his namesake businesses, including his golf courses, Mr. Trump has maintained a lavish lifestyle by taking tax deductions on what some people would consider personal expenses, including housing, aircraft, and $70,000 in hairstyling for television appearances. Even though President Trump vowed to no longer pursue any new business once elected, according to the New York Times, he made $73 million from foreign deals during his first 2 years in the White House. In a statement to CBS News, Alan Garten, an attorney for the Trump Organization, said the New York Times story is riddled with gross inaccuracies. Over the past decade, the president has paid tens of millions of dollars in personal taxes to the federal government. He also said the Times rejected our repeated request that they show us any of the documentation, though the paper says it declined to provide records in order to protect its sources. The president has long refused to release his tax returns, the first president in modern history not to do so, and has frequently made this argument against releasing them.
They're under audit, and when they're not, I would be proud to show.
However, an audit does not prevent the president from releasing his records.
CBS's Paula Reed, 6 minutes past 8 o'clock. Also sure to be a topic at the presidential debates, the protests and violence in cities across America, including ours. Let's get caught up on what happened in and around Seattle as far as the protests over the weekend. Here's KIRO Radio's Hannah Scott.
Protests across Seattle have been ongoing since late May following the killing of George Floyd. They had calmed some lately, but after a grand jury last week declined to indict any of the Kentucky officers involved in the shooting of Breonna Taylor for killing her, protests erupted across the country and, of course, here in Seattle. Saturday, demonstrations were a show of solidarity with the nationwide protests and left a path of destruction across Seattle. From City Hall to Capitol Hill, where those in the crowd set fires and faced off with Seattle police in the area formerly known as the CHOP.
The violence and lawbreaking need to stop.
All of this leading to a plea from Seattle's interim police chief late yesterday.
I'm asking every member of this community to join me in this call. I support our First Amendment freedoms for peaceful and lawful demonstrations, calling for an end to injustices and inequity and racism that are present across our society. To those paying attention, these calls for change are being drowned out by relentless violence, mayhem, and illegal behavior. I'm simply saying recent events are not exercises in the First Amendment freedoms. They're lawlessness for an apparent singular goal for destruction.
Chief Adrian Diaz describes the chaos.
For the past few nights, crowds of individuals with no clear message about change have been breaking windows, setting large fires, assaulting officers with rocks, bottles, and metal bats, throwing explosives at buildings and officers, and blocking first responders from addressing the criminal behavior and fires.
And he says,
the Seattle Police Department has addressed each of these events, and we have made over 24 arrests. We're working with our city, county, and federal partners to ensure individuals who engage in this level of criminal behavior are held fully accountable.
Diaz also making clear
Some will claim that the fires and property destruction are acceptable. Some will even state that assaulting an officer is okay because they have protective equipment. But no, none of this behavior is acceptable.
and he pointed to incidents earlier last week.
I have little doubt that had on the officer assaulted with a metal bat had not had a helmet on, it would have been a critical or deadly injury. The metal bat cracked the helmet. I know some have asked, why are we wearing out there from the onset in helmets? That is a perfect example. Some of the individuals have shown night after night they want to hurt and potentially kill officers.
And one particular arrest.
Last night, we arrested a 19-year-old Kirkland man on suspicion of arson. We continue to investigate all these instances of arson and assaults on officers that seem to occur each and every night.
Bottom line,
Some will state that the behavior is justified because of these actions of some of the police officers. What I know is that here in Seattle, our robust accountability system will investigate any and every complaint against officers, and I will hold those accountable when the evidence shows it is deserved. Again, I want to be clear. My issue is not with peaceful demonstrations. However, information shared online by some of the parent organizers of these events make it clear what their goals are. To compromise the wellness and health of my officers, to tie up SPD resources, to decrease the support that SPD has in the community, and to disrupt normal community activities.
Hannah Scott with Seattle's interim police chief. Let's talk Supreme Court. On his nomination of Amy Coney Barrett to serve on the court, the president said it'll be very hard for Democrats to dispute her qualifications. He also says he did not talk with Barrett directly about Roe v. Wade and other issues that she might confront.
I didn't discuss certain concepts and certain things, and some people say you shouldn't. I don't see any reason why you shouldn't, but I decided not to do it. She is certainly conservative in her views and her rulings, and we'll have to see how that all works out.
There were demonstrations outside the Supreme Court. Here is a community activist by the name of Rocky Twyman.
If you have a woman that has been raped or incest, and if she doesn't want to have the baby, to me, that's her God-given right.
Here's the voice of a black pro-life activist.
If anyone says Black Life Matters, you say every Black Life matters, from the womb to the tomb, because 53% of every black child is murdered in the womb. So let me pray for our new justice.
Democrats are hoping to delay the nomination as a little payback for the way President Obama's Supreme Court nominee, Merrick Garland, was treated 4 years ago. But there's not much they can do except complain. Senate Minority Whip Dick Durbin was on ABC's This Week.
Senator Mitch McConnell, who could find no time to attend negotiating on the coronavirus relief package that we need to put together for the pandemic facing our country, for the unemployed people, for the businesses. Senator McConnell refused to attend those meetings, didn't have the time to do it. And yet when this vacancy occurred, he dropped everything. Now we're going hell-bent on getting this done before the election. We could slow it down, perhaps a matter of hours, maybe days at the most, but we can't stop the outcome.
But he was hoping to get at least one concession from Amy Coney Barrett during the confirmation hearing.
I think that she should step forward and say that she will recuse herself from any election contest involving this president.
Joe Biden held a news conference in Wilmington, Delaware. He was among those saying the vote on the nomination should be delayed until after the election.
Their voices may not matter to Donald Trump. They may not matter to Mitch McConnell. But there are Senate Republicans out there who know in their hearts but if they shut out the voices of those during a voting period, during an election, closing the door on American democracy thereafter. It should come as no surprise that on Saturday, President Trump would nominate Judge Amy Coney Barrett, and on Sunday, lay out clearly what his objective is: to terminate Obamacare.
We'll no doubt have more to say about this tomorrow night at the first of the three presidential debates. It is 12 minutes past 8 o'clock, and let's take a look at the weather. It's going to be sunny today. We get sunshine right now. It's going to be the same way on Tuesday and Wednesday. It gets a little cloudier on Thursday and Friday, but for now, I see nothing but sunshine until a week from Wednesday. So next 10 days, sunshine and, nothing but dry weather, not necessarily sunshine the whole time. but these next 3 days are going to be really nice. Right now it is 55 degrees.
I mean, you don't have to undersell it. It's going to
Headed
be a
to
nice
72.
week.
I just want to
Just
be
a
completely
few
fair
clouds
about
Thursday,
what people
Friday.
can expect from the weather. The forecast was dead on over the weekend, and it was a lovely day yesterday.
It was. Although the spiders are just going nuts.
You were absolutely right about that. We had to swift under the bed again because they lurk under there, you know.
You should have nothing under your bed. I could give you all the tricks. As a recovering arachnophobic, I'll give you all the tricks. I could help you out.
It's amazing what gathers down there. It is 8:13, real-time traffic now. And here is Chris Sullivan, brought to you by Subaru of Puyallup.
And we have 2 right lanes blocked on northbound I-5 as you get out of 320th and Federal Way. For a moment, we had the entire freeway blocked as they cleaned up a little bit of debris. But right now, just 2 right lanes blocked. And the delay probably about 5 or 6 minutes there as you go up past Highway 18. But then you will pick up the pace and you won't have to hit the brakes again until you get all the way up to the north end of Boeing Field. Looking at 42 minutes now from Federal Way into Seattle. The Renton to Bellevue Drive is still pretty heavy as you work your way past the Maple Valley Highway, SR 900, up to 44th and Newcastle. Still a 30-minute drive from Renton to Bellevue. Out of the north end, we're still looking pretty good. About 35 minutes from Everett to Bellevue, 30 from Everett to Seattle. The reason that the 405 southbound drive is a little heavier than the other side of the lake is because there is some slowing approaching 520. In the Tacoma area, we're clearing up a lot more of the slowing around the Dome up towards the Puyallup River. We just have a little bit of it left over to deal with. And northbound 167, the Valley Freeway, has a little slowing as you work your way past Sumner, a little bit more up through Pacific, but the rest of the way up is not too bad. This report brought to you by Subaru of Puyallup. Traffic is stressful. One thing that's stress-free, buying a car from Subaru of Puyallup. Read the reviews. You'll see why. Subaru of Puyallup is your stress-free dealership.
The exuberance is engulfing Wall Street again today. Dow is up 464 points and NASDAQ up 161. It is 8:15. This is Seattle's Morning News. Dave Ross with Colleen O'Brien and Chris Sullivan. Maybe the key to keeping America an economically viable superpower is not just going to green energy or creating a new brain trust in our colleges and universities, but by simply reproducing more. And that's the theme of Matthew Iglesias' new book, 1 Billion Americans, The Case for Thinking Bigger, which is the most novel approach to economic hegemony I've read. You argue that when we're up against countries like India, like China, which have vastly larger populations, the idea that we can simply thrive on brains and ingenuity alone is a pipe dream. So where did this idea for more rapid reproduction come from?
I mean, look, it's in the numbers, right? You look at Canada, nice country, they got some good stuff going on there, but they're not a major power in the world, right? And why not? It's because there's only 30 million of them. We've got 330 million. That's why the United States has been a major power historically. But when you look at China, 1.2 billion people. So even as a middle-income country, they are at risk of becoming the number one sort of power economically in the world. They're already, for example, the number one source of movie tickets. And that means that Hollywood studios submit their movies to Chinese censorship before deciding what to release globally. I don't think that's something, we should accept or feel good about. We've been number one for as long as anyone alive today has been around, and we should aspire to maintain that lead, especially because when you look at it, what it will take to get to 1 billion Americans, investing in our families and our children, doing parental leave, giving some extra money to parents when they need it, doing preschool, being more open to immigrants. This is going to make America a better country as well as a stronger and sort of greater power in the world.
So we're not number one because of American exceptionalism and our moral superiority?
It doesn't hurt that we have some good ideas and some good founding principles. But it's a world where the numbers count for something, right? Something you see with Donald Trump is he talks a lot about making America great again, but then he talks about America in an incredibly exclusionary way. He wants to make the country smaller in its aspirations, smaller in who counts as a real American. And we're going to achieve greatness to the extent that we do by being more inclusive, by being more open to the people who want to come here.
Okay, so to triple the population, as you recommend, there are two ways to do it, and that is have bigger families or invite more people in. So how would you handle the birth rate problem?
Birth rate problem, you can make this sound creepy, right? But it's not a scary thing. Most Americans say, and they have said since the early 1980s, they'd like to have 2 to 3 children. But we've slipped so that we're now having 1 to 2 children per woman, per family. And the main reason for that, people say, is the cost of childcare and the financial burdens of it. You sort of need more years of school to achieve financial stability these days. In a lot of our housing markets in Seattle, in Washington, where I live, in New York and San Francisco, it's hard to afford a house. And so I think we need to do more to support families with children financially. We need to say this is activity that we value as a society.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like a baby isn't like having an exotic pet. You deserve some help with it. And it's going to come naturally. We don't need like a weird propaganda campaign. Lots of people don't want to have kids, and that's totally fine.
Well, that means we got to get past this epidemic as quickly as possible, because it's killing the dating scene. How are you supposed to meet somebody to reproduce with?
I suppose. I mean, look, there's a lot of reasons we need to be dealing with this pandemic better. That definitely counts as one of them.
Okay, and the other way besides reproduction is immigration. And what you're saying is, let's acknowledge the fact that a lot of people really want to come here. We're stupid to be keeping them out. And the way you'd handle the illegal immigration problem is just opening up more legal immigration, correct?
I mean, we should be creating pathways for people to come here legally. What we know is that immigration is very beneficial, actually. It has large positive economic impacts. We have a lot of disagreement about people who come here illegally because the rule of law is important. But we need to create pathways, for example, to get the farm workers that we want to have. We could have no immigrant farm workers, and we could just import all our strawberries. But what does that accomplish? Why is that better, right? Than creating opportunities. But we really ought to look at the possibilities of skilled immigrants.
Yeah, I mean, the president says that he'd be fine with more legal immigration if we're more selective about who comes in. If you bring in people who have skills or who have money, because the concern is you're going to bring in a lot of poor people. You're not going to get their, quote, best people, and then we just become a source of welfare.
So that's what he says. I mean, what's upsetting to me is it's not what he does, right? He has made it harder to get student visas. He's made it harder for skilled workers to come as guest workers. He's done everything in his power to clamp down on legal immigration of skilled workers. I have a lot of problems with President Trump, but he has, I think, decent instincts about some of this stuff. It is common sense that if you can get, an above average income job, contribute an above average amount to the tax base, particularly if you're young, if you come in your 20s and you're going to be working here for decades before you collect Social Security, that's great, right? Nobody should be sitting around paranoid about that kind of thing. And yet our bureaucracy makes it so difficult. And the people he's appointed, they're so xenophobic that they don't do it.
But here's the other thing, though. Is there room for triple the population? Won't you get in trouble with the left for basically taxing the nation's resources, which are already being taxed?
Yeah, I mean, look, we actually have a lot of resources, right? So 1 billion Americans will give us the population density of France, about half the population density of Germany. So those countries get by okay, right? What we need to do environmentally is we need to make investments in generating clean energy, right? We don't need to use less. We need to create more. We need abundance of green electricity, electric vehicles, batteries, things like that. I mean, this is why I think most people in the environmental movement have come around to this Green New Deal concept, is what they call it, right? Yeah. And it's a vision, right, of doing more, not doing less. This is an optimistic book, right? I am saying, look, we sent astronauts to the moon. We settled the West. Can we meet the challenge of Chinese economic growth? I want to say, yes, we can. And I want to talk about what those solutions might look like.
Matthew Yglesias, his radical idea is 1 billion Americans, the case for thinking bigger, which you can now, I guess you can download it on your Kindle if you want to give Jeff Bezos a cut of the profits and get it at your bookstore. Thank you, Matthew.
Thank you.